What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. Today's tutorial is this birdhouse tutorial where we're cutting out a lot of design using masks. So if you've not used them before, this is a great tutorial to learn how to use them. As always, there's a link in the description to the palette that you can follow along with the exact same colours. There's also a link to the image as well that you're going to need for the texture over the brush. If you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so if you'd like some lovely tutorials to follow along with, hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell. And as always, a massive shout out to my patrons. I'll throw their names up on the screen now. Or if you'd like to get extra tutorials every single month, as well as join our exclusive Facebook group, as well as extra perks on our Discord, hit the link down below and show your support over there. And with all that said, let's get started. So as always, let's create a new canvas for today's design, and our canvas size is going to be 2500 by 2500. And once we're into the canvas, we can change the background color. So we're going to go up to our layers, we're going to go to our background color and change it for this dark navy color here in the palette. And now we've got that done, we can then get started with creating the wood for the tree, and then we'll move on to the wood for the bird's house as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this selection tool for this one. So we should have an additional new layer, and that's what we can start with. And you need to make sure you've got white selected, and you can do that by double tapping in the top left hand corner to select white. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the selection tool, and we're going to use the option of the rectangle, and we're also going to check on the option of color fill, which based on the color we've got selected up here will fill that rectangle in automatically with the color that we're going to use. So let me pinch out on my canvas. What we're going to do is we're going to draw a rectangle in the middle, and we're going to then scale them down to get smaller to create that circular look to the tree. So first of all, let's get started with the first rectangle, which should be something roughly like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then grab our cursor and just move that slightly more to the center, like so. And then what we'll do is we'll grab our layers, and let's first of all swipe that to the left hand side, and then we get the option of duplicate. Then we're going to grab our cursor and we're going to drag that parallel to it until we get the blue bars, just to let us know that we are also aligned nicely top and bottom. And then what we'll do is we're going to go to our layers, because this is the two middle ones. We're going to go to our layers, we're going to swipe on this layer, and we're going to duplicate it as well. And then we're going to grab our cursor, and the first thing we're going to do is switch to the freeform. And if we grab this little handle here, we can scale this rectangle down and make it smaller. So something roughly a third in and leaving 2/3 here. And then grab your cursor again and just drag it over to the right hand side and sort of give the same sort of gap. So now that's one side. We can then go to our layers again. Let's swipe that one to the left and duplicate that. Grab our cursor and then drag that to the other side as well. And then we're going to repeat that step one more time just to create another thinner layer. So I'm going to go to our layers again, turn it on and off to make sure you're on the right one. Swipe that to the left and duplicate. Go to your cursor. With the freeform option, we're going to scale this one down. Again, you could go either halfway or down to 1/3, but I'm going to go halfway, and then I'm going to just move it across like so. And you want to make sure you get the blue bars top and bottom as well, and you can make sure that they appear by turning on the snapping option here. And then I'm going to repeat the process by swiping this layer to the left and duplicating it, and then grabbing our cursor and then moving it to the opposite side. Now this whole part was just to make sure we get the circular look to the sort of tree, and these lines will really help us start to work out what we need to start erasing, but this is meant to look like that circular look to the tree. And then we're going to simply go to our layers and we're going to pinch all of them together. So all you can do is simply grab from the top and bottom and bring them closer together and pinch them all into one nice layer. And then let's grab our cursor, and we may want to make this slightly taller just for the moment, and also position it nicely in the center of the canvas. So if you turned on snapping, you'll get the orange bars, which lets you know it's straight down the middle, both horizontally and vertically once you hit that central point. So now we've got our sort of base layer for our sort of tree. We can go ahead and just lower the opacity down on this one momentarily, just so that we can see it still, but we can come back to it shortly afterwards. So that's the tree. Let's go ahead and continue the same sort of process with the selection tool. We're going to create a new layer. And then we're going to go up to our selection. We're going to continue with rectangle and color fill. And now we're going to do the main body of the bird's house. So I'm going to simply create my shape roughly so wider than the two in the middle, but something roughly like this. And let's scale it and make it a little bit taller. We can adjust it afterwards. That's my first shape. Now I'm going to go to my layers and we're going to put them on individual layers just in case we want to adjust them afterwards. So let's create a new one. So actually drag this one underneath because this is going to be the bottom piece of wood. And we're going to go up to our selection again. If I zoom in now, we're going to add in a little extra piece under here. So let's just make it the same width roughly as the two big chunky lines in the background there. And let's make it a bit taller so we get a little bit of space to play with. And then again, let's grab our cursor and then just position that in the middle so we get the orange line. And let's do the same for our main part of the bird's house even. And let's just move that into position like so. And then if we move up to the top, we can then add in two more pieces of wood. So we're going to create another new layer. We're going to grab our selection tool again. And we're going to draw in a slightly wider bit of flat facing wood. Something like that will be good. Didn't mean to rhyme that, but it did. Let's grab the cursor and move it into the middle of the canvas again, just to make sure everything's nicely aligned. And then the final one, let's create one new layer again. Drag that layer then underneath the rectangle we just made, just so it sits correctly in terms of its layering. And then we're going to go to our selection again one more time, and we're going to create a rectangle now, slightly narrower than the body of the bird's house. So I'm just going to draw it in like so, and something like that's good. We can obviously grab our cursor and then position that in the center again. Except while we're on this option with the cursor, the difference is with this one we're going to angle this piece of wood. So we're going to go to our distort option, and when I zoom in, we're going to grab these handles in the top left and top right and just bring them inwards until we create a nice little piece of slanted wood. So something like that is good. And then you want to kind of repeat that same on the other side, and you want to get this node here into the middle. So let me just drag that in, and then we should end up something like that, and somewhat symmetrical. It's not going to be too much of a biggie. If it's slightly off by a couple of pixels, it's not a problem. And again, let's just grab our cursor just to be sure one more time and position it in the middle. And if we zoom out, we've got the outline now for our bird's house. Now at this point I'm going to go to my layers. I'm actually going to make my body of my treehouse slightly smaller in terms of its height. So now I've got all the shapes in place, I'm going to then go to my cursor and freeform. I'm just going to scale mine down ever so slightly. And if you wanted the exact pixel count, it's there. It was 1066 is my height. And I'm going to go to my layers and I'll move this piece of wood up. So you turn it on and off just to be sure, and then grab the cursor, and I'm just going to position mine underneath like so. And now I think I've got the right proportions for this. Now the only thing what we want to do is we also want to cut out a nice little circle here, which obviously the birds would come in and out of. So let's go to our colors and let's just select any old color. It doesn't matter as long as you can see it against the white. So I'm going to pick any sort of shade of reddy orange there. I'm going to go to my brush library. I'm going to scroll down until I find the option of calligraphy, and then we're going to use the monoline brush. And your brush size doesn't really matter. I'm going to make it bigger so you can see on screen. And then we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer above the body of the bird's house. And then we're going to simply draw a circle in the middle of the screen. Hold your pen at the end to get a perfect ellipse. But if you pop your finger on the screen, you'll also get a perfect circle. And something around about that for size is good. And we can drag and drop the color in. And then let's grab our cursor. And let's position that first of all straight down the middle of the design. And then roughly around about here is good in terms of positioning. So we get the hole here. Now what we want to do is cut this out of our body of our bird's house. So let's go to our layers. Let's tap on the layer again and we'll get the option of select. We want to turn off the color fill option now. And then we should get all these diagonal lines on the screen. But the center of the circle here is not covered in those lines, which means we've selected that shape nicely. And then if we go to our layers, we can tap on our body of our tree house here. Let's turn off the circle and we should end up with a little imprint still of a circle in the middle. Let's go to our eraser and let's just use a big brush. Let's find a big brush in our collection. So let's go to the airbrushing section. Let's use the medium blend under airbrushing. If we make our brush size nice and big and press nice and firmly, we can cut that out of the center of our bird's house like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the shape of this bird's house out of the wood lines in the background. So we're going to go to our layers, and then each one of these shapes, we can actually also swipe this orange circle away now. We don't need that. So we should end up with 4 shapes for the bird's house. Let's tap on each layer individually. So we're going to tap on that layer and use the option of select. We're going to go to our lines here, which is our background layer, which we created initially. And then we're going to tap on that layer and we're going to use the option of clear. And you'll notice from your preview, a little line will appear through the design. Now, if I turn this off, you'll notice that this has now been cut out nice and neatly. And we're going to do the same for each one of the different shapes. So let's tap on the big body here. Let's tap on that and use the option of select. We then go back to our layers. We go back to layer 1 here for me, which is all our lines in the background. And tap on that layer and use the option of clear. And you'll see a little preview change one more time. We're then going to do the same for the next shape above. So tap on that layer, select the layer, go back to your group of layers, and then on your tree lines in the background, tap on it and use the option of clear. And then finally one more time, let's use the top shape, tap on that, select, go back to your layers, and then go to the bottom one and tap on it and use the option of clear. Now the only thing we need to do is just erase the center here. And if we grab our eraser that we were just using and make the brush size a little bit smaller, we should just be able to quickly erase the center here, like so. My brush size was set to roughly about 9% there, so you should be able to easily just get rid of that little bit in the middle. And now with that done, we're going to move on to now the tree lines in the background and start to create that wood effect on them, and then we'll come back to the body of the bird's house. So let's go to our layers, and on this layer I'm going to keep it at a lower opacity just so we can see the shape. So I'm going to keep it at roughly around about 30%. So our bird's house is nice and clear, but we can also get an idea, for shape of our lines in the background. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layer here now, and we're going to tap on it and we're going to add a layer mask. Now, if you're new to Procreate or just new to masks in general, if we tap on mask, we get this white layer. Anything in white on this mask will reveal part of the design of that layer. So like a mask will do, it will hide and show. So if we drew in black, because it changes your color to black, and we draw on that mask, we'll actually start to erase part of it. But if I switch that back out now to white and then start to draw that back in, well, it will start to reveal it again. So white shows and black hides. And so we can use that with the mask and start to erase part of the tree. But should you want to reveal it again, or you make a mistake, or you want to change a piece of wood, you can do, and you can reveal it again and paint it back in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our colors first of all, and we want to start erasing. So with the logic we just explained, we want to use the option of black. And with Procreate, you can either double tap in the top left to get white, or you can double tap at the bottom to get black. And then if we go to that layer, we want to make sure we're on the mask, and you'll know which one you're on because it's a slightly darker color. And then with our brushes, we're going to go to calligraphy, and we're going to scroll down, and we're going to use the script brush for this one. And my brush size is set to, it's 18% at the moment, so we may vary that, we may make it smaller, we may make it bigger. Now the first thing I want to do is outline the bird's house. I want to give it a nice bold outline, because what we're doing with this effect is we're essentially using all the shadows to pretty much create the design. It's going to cast the shadow around onto the tree. It's also going to outline our different objects. So let's first of all outline the tree. And the perfect thing with the script brush is you can press nice and firm and you'll get a thicker line. If I go nice and thin and thick and then thin again, you can see different, depending on my pressure, I also get different sizes of the brush. And all we want to do is outline it. Now this style as well doesn't require you to do too many sort of straight lines. So I'm going to go all the way up, and then I'm going to go all the way across the top of the bird's house. Now you can hold your brush if you want to and get a perfectly straight line, if that's something you want to achieve with this. But we're going to start off with an outline roughly like that. In some spaces you might not see the outline, like here, there's already a gap. But here's a perfect example that if I go around here and I press down and I go around, we'll end up with a shadow. Now this side, don't worry too much about being too particular with it, because we're going to create a much bigger casted shadow once we've done this outline. So we're going to go all the way down here like so, and then we're going to come inwards, but we just want to create this outline, and I'm pressing quite firmly, to be honest, as I make my way around, and we're just erasing around the outside here of the tree house or the bird's house, and come all the way down. Let's go around this part here and around there too. And now we've got our outline. What we want to consider is the lighting I'm putting up here in the top left, and it's going to cast a shadow this way. So I want to create some diagonal lines off of these points here and create our shadow. So a good example is this line here. I'm going to create a line roughly out to say here, and then that's the distance I need to keep replicating from all of these different points. So I'm going to create a line here and here. Now, if this is a bit tricky for you in terms of like the concept of it, you can sort of just create a thicker line around the outside here and keep building it up until you get to a nice distance. So you could, for example, keep building this line up. So you could do that, and then, create it outwards like here too, and then, link up all your lines together until you create that sort of shadow. So that's one way you could do it, and then build that up, and likewise. But I'm going to go back to the original style I was just going to do, where we're going to draw off of all the different points and then create our shadow. So let's start here, for example. It's a good point to start with. I'm going to draw in my shadow line like that, and I'm just replicating the sort of line here basically, but in the shadow. So then fill that in, and again, don't be too concerned about being nice and neat, because I think this style looks pretty good when we add a little bit of rough nature to it. So we're going to go all the way down. I'm going to come out from this point here, and being a mask, you can always drag and drop your colour in of black if there's a nice big section to do so. And then we're going to draw in our shadow here too. And like I said, we're just copying this line here, but at a slight angle and slightly further down. So all these points can nicely provide you with your shape that you need. And then we're going to come off of this point here and go all the way across. Now, like I said, this effect though, when we get towards the end, will really come together, and you'll see how this shadow plays a nice vital part within the style. And I just need to add in a little bit of a shadow up here too. And I've added in an L shape, so let's make that a nice straight line instead. And we're going to go straight down like so. So now we've got our casted shadow. We can actually now start erasing part of the wood. And what I want to do is I want to create like an oval style look around this. So what I'm first of all going to do is I'm just going to simply draw in a nice curved arch here, and I'm going to draw in a nice curved arch here. Now don't worry about it too much, but we're going to use it as a guide. And everything above, I'm simply just going to start erasing and getting rid of. And this is just me trying to get the shape of the design in play, and then I'm simply just going backwards and forwards until I erase part of the design. And you can hear that paperlike screen protector as well. So if you want to get your hands on a paperlike screen protector, there's a link in the description down below. Gives you that feel of paper on the screen, as well as the sound as well. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create a nice smooth arch in this corner here too. We'll start erasing part of this. And this is what we're going to do. We're just going to keep erasing parts of this design until we end up with the finished product. So I've done the same in the other corner and just created a slightly rounded edge. And then we want to make sure we get all the little gaps, don't leave any little pieces. And you can see that's quite a rough shape that I'm creating here. But then what we're going to do is, like I said, is start to erase and create that wood effect. Now the first thing I want to do, wood does not have straight lines running straight through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with my brush, and because of the pressure we can apply with this brush, I'm going to sort of increase and decrease my pressure all the way through and follow this line up and down. Now you'll be able to see what I do there is I start to erase part of that wood, and we start to get less of a straight line, and you can go back over as well. And we're going to create that sort of wood look to it where it's not so nice and smooth. I'm going to repeat that for all of the lines in between. Now by all means, if you want to, you can simply just shake your pen left and right if you do not have a pressure sensitive brush, but you can just start to thicken those lines up a little bit, as well as just erase part of that wood look in the middle of those lines there. And same down here too. And until you've gone through all the different lines of the wood. And again, what we're going to do is keep erasing and keep erasing. Now because the lighting's coming from this left hand side, this side on the right here, because of the curvature of a tree, we want to keep these lines in this side here a lot darker than this side. So what we're going to do is eventually start to build up the lines through the wood, but this side will eventually have very little left in terms of the sort of light blue colour here, because we're going to create that look that the tree's wrapping round, and it's starting to wrap around the side of the trunk of the tree. Now this is the fun part. We can actually start to just get in there and start chopping away at the wood and creating some nice lines running through it. Now with my brush size still set exactly the same, I'm going to draw a line straight down like that. And this is what we're going to continue to repeat. We're just going to draw some nice non-straight lines through the wood like so, until we start to, really build up that wood look. And we're doing it all manually. You could use a brush for this, or you could, add in a texture, but we're going to do that at the end just to add that extra touch. But we are just going to start erasing by drawing straight down. And again, by all means, if you make a mistake, change your color back to white, and maybe just go back in and change part of what you drew. Maybe you want to adjust the shape, but you can change it back to white and bring it back in. So I'm going to switch mine back out to black and continue on with the style. Now what I want to also do is each one of these sections, the 6 sections, I don't want them all to be nice and rounded and follow the same sort of length. So this one here, I'm going to cut straight across the bottom of it, and I'm going to erase part of it and bring this one slightly up and make it shorter. And likewise I might, and I might do the same up here too, where I erase part of this side here as well as up here too. And then now this piece is nice and smaller compared to the rest, and we can always, like I said, bring it back in with the mask should we want to. And I'm just going to create a nice thick cutout, and I don't want to leave too many thin pieces. I want to make sure that when I do the wood effect through it, I'm chopping a nice big chunk out of it. And let's repeat that now for the entire design. Start to build it up. So what you can do is you can keep the same consistency across all of them, but then start to again work from this right hand side and erase even more as we go. So just a straight line down in, maybe your straight line stops, and then maybe we add in another one. But you want to try and make sure there's no pattern in them. You don't want them too close or too repeating to one another. Maybe this one here, we have a big chunk, and then also cut that piece out at the top. And you want to start to think about how you can chop your wood at the top here. So something maybe like that. Cut right across this piece here, and let's go all the way down and create our wood look to this piece here too. Nice big piece up like that. And also maybe put some little dashes in the wood as well, so that you create some different looks to it. And then the final one over here on the right anyway, let's just get a nice line in there, create some nice wood, and then maybe start to erase a piece out there as well. And let's go in here too, and let's just erase part of the wood look. And here maybe I go from the top and come down instead, and maybe one up from the bottom, and just vary that wood look slightly like that. And now we should end up with something that's starting to come to life in terms of the wood effect, but we want to start to build up, like I said, that this left side there's going to be more of it, and this right hand side there's less. So we're going to really start to thin this area out quite a bit until essentially this side here is just a streak, a singular streak. And so let's go back in and thicken up our lines even more. And I'm pressing kind of hard with these lines and just erasing as I go. I can really start to see now what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to just leave that little slither there. And I preferred it with this particular style to do the erasing, because you can slowly start to build it up rather than go in and draw a line. This way you can start to go in, build up the sort of shapes, and then understand what you then want to do next. Whereas if I drew this line in here, to get this little line here, maybe a bit trickier. So I'm just going in again, thickening up all my lines. Can't really talk today. And then let's just cut out more and more on this right hand side. And then really once we get to this, what was the fourth one in, we want to start to thin that out a little bit more. So we don't want to, as in, press too hard and chop out too much of this one. But this right hand side now is really starting to hit that style and the particular look that I want it to hit. And then over here we can also start to think about how our wood's gonna look at the top. Chop a little bit out there like that. This line here at the bottom here is starting to sort of needs to be chopped into. It's starting to look a bit too rounded and follow and too uniformed basically. So we're going to cut pieces out of that. Likewise here too. Let's chop a big chunk out of there. And then finally this one here, for me anyway, I need to chop a big chunk out of here too. And maybe I'll come up like that. And then we just really start to disperse that piece of wood. I think what I'm also going to do is I'm going to draw in a nice line that cuts straight across the wood. So we create a nice little cut inwards, and there's a thin line here that I want to just thicken up. Now everybody's wood's going to start to look a bit different at this point, but essentially we're building it up and building it up, and we should all end up at the same point where we've got some real dark areas over here. So I'm pressing quite dark here again and hard, and we're just starting to erase pieces of this right hand side more so than the left. And let's actually just put one more big cut in there like that. And I think, to be honest, we're almost there. Looking at that, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. I just want to get rid of some of these very easily, spotted sort of rounded edges towards the top. Quite a lot of these lines here are quite uniform still. And to be honest, I think if I cut a nice big line straight across there, that is pretty much it. Let's just have a look, maybe get rid of this last one and maybe cut a little piece there too. I'm going to actually leave that as it is there. So you can really now see what I was trying to achieve, that this left hand side's got a lot more of the original colour and the right hand side's very thin in terms of its lines and what's been left and what we have in terms of that rounding texture. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work in the same sort of fashion and erase part of the bird's house in the same style. So first of all, I want to outline this piece of wood that we created here. So to do that, I need to start erasing from this piece and this piece here. So let's go to the body first of the bird's house. Let's tap on that and let's add a mask. And then in the same fashion, we're going to zoom in and we are going to erase just this straight line edge here, like so. And you can see it's not straight in terms of my line, because again, we're just doing this sort of freehand and creating that sort of random, nice hand-drawn look to it. And then we also want to outline it on the top, just ever so slightly. So I'm going to go back to my layers. I'm going to find the slanted roof piece. I'm going to tap on that and I'm going to use the option of mask. And then on the mask, I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to just draw a straight line across until we outline that piece of wood. And then you can also start to see sort of how the structure of that little piece is going to come together. And I also want to apply the same logic of drawing an outline here, but on this bottom piece of wood as well. So let's go to our layers. Let's turn it on and off to make sure it's the right layer, so you know which one you've found. Tap on that layer and use the option of mask. And if I zoom in, we're going to simply just erase a line straight across. You can see there, it took a couple of attempts just to get straight across, but otherwise we're good. And now we've got all of our pieces nicely laid out. And let's start cutting out the pieces of wood for each one. So now while we're on this layer here for this particular shape, we're going to start cutting it out. Now a very quick and easy way for you to do this is actually just do a zigzag straight across the piece, where again you're starting to bear in mind that the right hand side is going to be cut out more than the left. So I'm going to create a nice big line here and create another line here, and you can vary your angles if you want to, something like this. But imagine when you see a piece of wood and it's been cut through the sort of the rings, you'll get these sort of lines that run through like so, and something like that is pretty good as a base, and then we can start to really fill it out even more. Now because of the way the shadows come in, I want to actually create a thicker line that we drew underneath the main body of the house. So let's actually just draw a line straight across, and if we hold our pen at the end we can actually get a straight line, but create a slight angle on it so it's tipping downwards, bottom right ever so slightly. And then we end up with a little bit of a slither left, and maybe we chop into here a little bit just to break up the wood. So I'm pressing quite lightly there and just creating some very thin lines running through the little piece that we've left, and I'm actually going to leave that as is. So that's the bottom part of the wood done. We can then move on to the top part. So let's move on to the main body here instead. So let's go to our layers and let's find the mask for the body. And we can turn that layer on and off just to be sure, and make sure you're on the mask. You'll know which one it is again because it's the darker layer. And with this one I'm going to draw some lines up and down the design, and then again just like we did with the outside, we'll start to erase more and more of them and thicken it up on the right hand side where the bigger darker shadows are. So if I zoom in and show you what I'm talking about, we're going to just draw in some lines from the top, something like that, and likewise from the bottom too. can bring those pieces of lines of wood in. And then what I also want to do is make sure I leave a nice gap all the way around this circle here as well, just to keep it nice and clean and away from the wood lines that we're creating. So maybe something like that, and then maybe this line here doesn't go all the way to the bottom, but it then catches back up here, and then maybe we draw in our line over here too, and likewise let's just create that in. So you can see straight from the back what I'm trying to do there is just draw in the wood lines, and then again we're just going to really start to thicken out these lines on the right. So let's start to do that. Let's go in, let's press really hard here, and we're going to draw a big nice bold line in here. Now I know this might be a bit daunting for some people in terms of, you've got to be quite hard and get rid of it all, but that's the beauty of, again, the mask, that you'll be able to go back in, and if you make a mistake or you're not happy with a particular point, draw it back in, absolutely no problem, and you won't need to worry too much. So it shouldn't be too daunting, but we're going to thicken up all these lines that we drew. I'm pressing pretty hard as well, and I'm also changing the pressure as I go up and down as well, just to create those thicker parts and then thinner parts. And then let's go over all of these last few lines here. These lines now meet, that's not a problem. And then up here too. And then I'm going to leave these lines here on the very left, because I feel like their weight is actually pretty good. I don't want to change their weight too much. Maybe just this one down here, and maybe this line here too. It's a thicker version, and then we go back over ourselves again, and then we go back and we continue to chop away at these bigger sections here. And maybe we introduce little slits within the wood, so something like that in these gaps. Not too many or not too little, but just that'll help us start to really erase the pieces of wood that we want to get rid of. And we also want to avoid keeping this really sharp right hand edge as well. So maybe we go pretty bold and we come in here and we follow this line all the way down to the bottom, and then we end up with a nice cutout here, just so that you get the impression that there's a straight line there, but you don't want it to be too very uniform, as we did above as well. So everybody's wood is going to again start to look different at this point, and we're going to start to thicken up different parts to one another, as well as your lines, and you may do less of them, you may do more, but this is actually a really fun style to do, especially if you want to really spend some time crafting your wood and how much you want to erase and how little you want to erase. And I'm going to add in some big cuts here as well in the wood, and likewise here too, and let's just press really hard down there too, add in some nice cuts, and then let's add in one thicker line here, just to shed some weight from this side, just a little. We don't want it to be too light, but we don't want it to be too dark, because we want that contrast between the two. So we can see here we've got quite a big part up here, so I need to try and reflect that. So you may end up joining lines together by thickening up different parts. You can see there I quickly whipped in there and ended up joining up a few different lines together to create this look. And then likewise, let's go up here and let's zoom out there too. And then maybe we end up actually erasing part of these lines that we create, these little dashes. Maybe they actually become part of the wood. And let's continue with this one here. And up there too. And then maybe we have to reintroduce different lines just to try and keep those little gaps that we wanted to look for. And I can see, if you might have to step back a second and just have a look, where's your darkest parts and how can you nicely start to just fade them out to the left hand side. So I can see I've got quite a big dark patch here, so I need to start fading them out towards that left hand side. And maybe I'll create another big cutout, but leave a tiny little slither here, again just to give the eye a nice line to follow roughly down there like so. And maybe we even cut across into this piece here. And zooming out, I'm pretty happy with that. I might just cut a little piece out at the top here, and likewise here too, just to really slant this shadow that this is probably casting over on the wood. So I've just drawn a straight line across, and I'm actually pretty happy with that, to the point where I'm going to leave it for the moment. And again, the beauty of this is before we get to the final touches, you can go in and change it at any point you want. So let's now move to the next piece of wood, which is this one here. Now what we want to do is we want to now start to work on this piece of wood here. So I'm going to turn it on and off to be sure. And I can see that there's a little bit of spillage over in behind it. So I'm simply going to go to my layers, and first of all I can see that the body of the treehouse is starting to cut into it. So I'm going to go to the mask of that. And I'm just going to erase this part here underneath, because obviously we're going to start erasing from this piece of wood that normally sits here. We want the underside to be nice and clean. And likewise we just need to cut from this piece here too. So we're going to go to our slanted roof part here, go to the mask and just erase in this little line here. So just a little tidy up required there. But then if we go to our layers and turn that on again, and then we can start to cut out from this piece here. So let's go to that layer now. Let's tap on it and we're going to use the option of mask. And on the mask, we're going to start doing the diagonal lines just in the same way that we did down here as well. So starting from the right, we're going to add in a nice big chunky line coming across here, and then some more, and add some waves in them if you want to, you know, and then thin them out as we start to really get closer to this edge over here. Now mine are obviously quite uniformed here, so we want to really start to now go in and break them up. So let's go in here, let's cut straight across this corner like so until we leave a tiny little slither. Maybe I'll cut even straight through it, and then maybe we add some more cuts through here all the way up to the top, and then we add in some here too. Maybe this one just spirals out like that. Maybe we bring that one in as well. And then these ones need to start getting a bit thinner, so we don't want to start erasing too much, but we want to leave some nice thin lines out here so there is a nice little bit of solid wood. So maybe I'll add a nice little flick up in here. And as always, we're going to go in and start to thicken each piece up as well. And you can see if you bring those lines in from the top and from the bottom, you can really start to add in that wood effect. And I'm going to cut into other pieces here to add in some extra details. Let's find some pieces we can cut into. Like so. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy with that piece. I'm not going to make any further changes to that. I've got my lines coming diagonally in the whole way across, and you know, maybe you could be pretty bold and cut even more out. Maybe you just cut that straight out like that, and let's do it. Let's cut that piece out and leave it as is. And now let's move on to the top part as well. So let's do the same sort of fashion for that. So we're going to go to our layers and we're going to find the piece that we want, which is this one here. I'm going to go on the mask and let's start erasing from this one as well. Now in my design, I want to do the opposite direction in terms of the diagonal lines. So I'm actually going to start to come from the top left and go to the bottom right. And again, nice and thin on the left, but thicker on the right. So I'm going to come straight across here and start to add in those diagonal lines. And then each line is going to start to get thinner as it gets across like so. And then again, let's start cutting out and erasing bits that we don't want. So let's be bold over here, add in, let's keep the corner itself, and then start to erase parts of inside the actual tree wood style. Something like that. And maybe curve that up like so. And then maybe we add a nice big line running straight through this piece. And then over here, you know, just like we did just below, you can maybe add in some nice flicks from the top. I like that one. Let's add in some more here. And sometimes they can be a great place to start. You might want to add in the lines and then thicken them up as well. So if you're getting stuck, just add in the diagonal lines, and then you can really start to work out what you do and do not want in your particular one. I also want to thicken up this line here, so there's a nice big separation between the two pieces of wood. So let's just cut straight across here like so. And I'm actually now going to start cutting into it a bit more, leave some individual shapes. I liked that, but not at the top, so maybe something like that. So we leave this little piece down here, and then let's not forget the little cuts inside the wood as well, like this. Add in a nice cut there from the top and from the bottom, and again maybe we start to disconnect some of these pieces from each other. And this left side's looking very sort of still intact, and this right hand side's looking a lot more disjointed from the rest. So maybe we need to just add in some slightly thicker lines over here, just so it's not too much of a contrast between the two. Maybe cut that bottom part out like that. So when I zoom out, I'm actually very happy with the full texture of all of that. So I'm going to leave that now as is. And now we can move on to the colouring and then adding in some nice subtle highlights, and then also add in the texture that's going to sit on top. So now if you're happy with your wood at this point, if you're not, go back in and just make the adjustments now, so that when we move on to the next stage you will still have the ability to reveal and bring in bits and bobs that you want to still show again. But for me, I'm very happy with the aesthetic of that one there, the wood effect, as well as, you know, the different styles and grains in the wood. So I'm actually now going to move on to the next step. Now the next step is, first of all, we need to go to the base layer, which is our tree. We need to go to the N, and we need to bring the opacity all the way back up to 100%. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply the mask to every single layer. So we're going to pinch on this layer here, we're going to pinch the mask on, we're going to pinch the mask on, and I'm going to do that for all of them, like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pinch all of them into one layer. And that's exactly why I said if you've got any changes to make, you should make them prior, just so now we have only one layer and all the data has now been crushed into one. So now with that layer selected, let's start to colour it in. Let's have some fun with the colours in the palette. So let's tap on it and use the option of alpha lock. Let's go to our colours and we're going to switch it straight out to then this yellow here. So let's select that colour, which is the first colour on the second row. We're going to go to our layers and we're going to tap on the layer and we're going to use the option of fill. And now we're starting to really come closer to the actual finish in terms of the colour scheme. And now we're going to go to our brush library and we're going to go to painting, and we're going to use the oil brush for this one. And my brush size currently is set to roughly about 10%. And we want to create that some sort of a gradient from left to right, where the left is primarily like yellow and whites and the right is more the dark oranges, slightly close to red. And we're going to do that for each sort of line of the wood of the tree as well. And this is a very rough colouring in as well. We don't really concern ourselves too much with adding in, you know, very intricate bits of colour. This is nice and easy to do this stage. So let's switch our colour out now. We've got our base colour. Let's start to add in the different colours. So I'm going to add in this colour here first, the bottom left of the entire palette. So third row, first colour. And all I'm going to do is start to just paint in, especially in this centre here, you'll start to see that the left hand side will be yellow and white and the right hand side will be this orange. So I'm just going to start drawing in. And a little tip here, you can see my brush every time I draw on the screen. There's an outline of the actual brush itself. If you go to your actions and you go to preferences, you can turn on the brush cursor and you'll be able to see that on the screen as well. And you can see here now I'm going to start painting in the right hand side of the bird's house, adding in that colour. And then as I start to get to the left, I'm then starting to focus more so on the sort of right hand edge of all these lines here. So like any line that there is, just adding a little bit of colour over on the right hand side of it, like so. And then we add that in, running up and down the treehouse. And then because of the way the shadow's coming and the way the lighting is, we're going to add a little bit of colour around the left hand side of the sort of hole into the bird's house, like so. And then let's just add in a nice little bit of random colour. And again, like I said, this is very random. I'm not being very neat with this. This whole style looks very good, especially in the end when we add the texture. It doesn't need to be intricate, it will just be lost anyway if you spend too much time on it. So I'm just adding in that colour, especially very bottom right, adding in it in full because we've got a slightly darker tone to also add in as well slightly after. And then let's do the same for the wood in the top section. So let's start on the right. It's going to be nice and orange. And then as we start to get to the left, you may want to reduce your brush size, but otherwise you can just start to paint in, you know, the right hand side of each piece, just adding in a tiny little touch of colour here and there. Let's also paint in the top section as well, so the top right, and then fading it out towards the left hand side. And you don't again have to be too precise with this, but then just add in a little bit of orange in these areas over here too. And then if we zoom out and go to the very bottom, right hand side again, and because there's very little in terms of detail here, I'm not going to add in any more than that. I've just added orange all the way through into here. And then if we zoom out, we look at the overall what we've done there. We've just added in some nice burnt lines in here, but the right hand side is nice and dark. And then like I said, we've got highlights to add in as well as darker shadows. Let's do the same for the wood on the outside. So this is all pretty much going to end up being orange. I'm going to leave very sporadic little pieces of yellow, such as here. And I'm going to erase or colour in all these pieces like so until we start to get around the tree, and then I'll do the same effect that I've done here, where I'll just add it on the right hand side of any edge in the piece of wood here, so like here. And then you do have to be careful ever so slightly that you don't paint on the tree and the bird's house even. I don't know how many times we're going to say that wrong. But we'll paint on this edge here, and let's just paint all the way down there, and then add a tiny bit of orange just up and down this edge ever so slightly, so it's more the right hand side of the wood. That's now coming along. We can now add in the slightly darker colour. So now let's switch it out for the next colour, which is on the third row. It's the second colour, the very dark orange, and we're going to add in some darker orange in these sections of orange that we previously painted in. So sort of fading it out to that much darker reddy orange, and maybe we add in some in these sections here too, again being very rough. And let's just continue adding that in the darker sections only, maybe the odd occasion where we just add in some dark sort of orange over here. Likewise, let's not forget our bottom piece here too, up here as well. So we're not going as far as where the first orange we painted in, we're just staying more to the right hand side and just painting that in like so. And then let's do the same over here. So bear in mind what you tried to keep over here. You know, I did want to keep a little bit of yellow on this particular piece, so I'm going to continue just to literally just paint this in, and down here as well. Just fade that out to the left hand side, and then up here maybe we just coat some of the edges in the darker colour. You see how random I'm being with this, and very rough, and it's just a nice sort of added little splash of colour for the moment. And now let's go to our colours, and let's switch it out to then the last colour we're going to use, which is the second colour on the first row. And continuing on the same layer, we're going to add our highlights now, which will primarily be on the left hand side. And we do want to add in the little highlight ring on here as well, just round the inside of the hole for the birds to get in and out of like so. Because the lighting's coming from this way, it's going to hit that edge like so. And now let's really add in some lovely highlight up and down this edge here, and then bearing in mind where our lines are, making sure we hit them as well. You can pretty much draw straight over the top of them, and to be honest I think it gives you the right effect of what I want to achieve, where we just end up with some nice edge highlights. And then just painting over these bits here, up and down. I'm not going to go too far into the design. I'm not going to go too far. In fact, that's probably about right. You don't want to go any further than halfway. And we're just painting in that edge, adding that extra nice little highlight in there. And we've got to do the same for all of the different pieces that we've got. So up here too, let's just add in a little bit of highlight, again being very random, drawing over basically some of the cutout pieces. Let's do the same up here as well. If you draw over the cutout pieces, you tend to edge and like just highlight parts of the wood. And then let's go down to the bottom as well, and you can see that, like I said, I'm being quite rough with it, but when we get to the end and you see the final result, you think, how will you manage to get away with being so rough with it? But based on what we're going to add on top of it, you won't see most of this, and it will just really bring all the colours to life anyway, what we're going to add the texture wise. So let's just edge these little pieces here too. Nice, add in that little highlight. Maybe even make this side nice and bright as well, because we're going to have quite a bit of lighting. This is primarily where our lighting is going to hit, so we can be quite bold with the white, slightly off white, nice little yellow. And a piece down here. Other than that, we're not going to go any further to the right hand side. We're actually going to leave it like that. So we've got some lovely little gradient changes within the design. And the final touch for this is, first of all, the texture, and then we'll add in a nice little glow in the background. I'm going to go to our layers. We're going to tap on a new layer. We're then going to go back to our multicolored layer for this design. We're going to tap on it, and we're going to use the option of select, which again is selecting the pixels. But what we want to do is, you'll get this little menu pop up, and we want to use the option of invert, because now we want to select everything around the outside, not the actual design itself. We're going to switch our color out to white, so we're going to double tap in the top left hand corner. And then if we go to our layers and we go to the new one we created, and now when we're on this layer, we want to tap on it and we want to use the option of fill. And now what it will do is it will fill everything else apart from the design that we've done in white. Now don't worry, I know it looks a bit weird at the moment, but if we tap on it and we use the option of clipping mask, it will completely disappear. But what we want to do is we want to grab our cursor and we want to use the uniform option just to make sure we don't adjust the shape in any way. And you'll see what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it down diagonally, bottom right, so from top left to bottom right, by about 2 pixels. Now the nice way to do this in Procreate is really cool. You can tap in the direction, and I've tapped 4 times. I did 2 to the right and 2 to the bottom. And if I zoom in and I actually confirm this with the cursor, you can see we've got a lovely white highlight now on the inside of every single piece of wood. So what we did was we moved that design, everything around the outside, 2 pixels to the right and 2 pixels down, and we ended up with a lovely little inner highlight on there. And now all of our wood's got a nice clean sharp edge to it with that nice highlight. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in the texture for the wood. So in the description down below there was a link to an image with a wood texture, and we're going to simply swipe in from the right hand side. Now if you haven't got your photos already open, you can swipe up from the bottom here, and then you can drag and drop your photos over to the right hand side like so. And I've got an album already set up for it, where I've got the image inside it, and all you do is simply drag and drop when it's in the small squares tile like this, and drag it onto the page like so, and it will import that wood texture, and you can swipe that away onto the screen. And then all we do is then go to our layers, we tap on that layer, and we use the option of clipping mask, and then we tap on the layer, and let's scroll all the way down in its layer properties to divide. And then we end up with this really cool wood grain texture running straight through the design, and we end up with that nice wood effect to it. And then the final little touch is to go to our layers. Let's create a new one. Let's drag it underneath the 3 layers we've already got. Let's go to our brush library and scroll down until we get to the airbrushing section. We're going to scroll up to the soft brush, and with my brush size set to roughly around about 47%, I'm going to change the colour out to this lovely light blue in the top right hand corner. I'm going to tap in the middle of the screen very lightly, and then all we're going to do is grab the cursor. I love to do these sort of aerial top lights. I'm going to scale it up and just move it up towards the top here until we get that orange line straight down the middle to let us know we're perfectly in the centre. I'm going to let go, and I'm going to grab my layer options, and I'm going to lower the opacity down until I get something around about 40%. And then we end up with this lovely nice little contrasting light blue colour from the top like so. And if I put my pen on the top and I go full screen with 4 fingers, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's a nice little masking experience, cutting in and out of this piece, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like down below, helps the channel out an awful lot. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button down below and you'll get access to Procreate tutorials every single week. As always, be sure to share your designs with me on Instagram. The links to both my Instagram and TikTok are in the description down below. Make sure to tag me in the post so I don't lose it in my feed. And as always, a huge shout out to my Patreons. I'll throw their names up on the screen now, where if you'd like to get some extra tutorials every single month, as well as access to our exclusive Facebook group and extra access on our Discord server, hit the link in the description down below and show your support over there. And I'll see you in the next one.